afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to In the Office with Scott and Wallace. We're here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'm Robert Scott.
I'm Matt McNamara.
And as you may know, Matt handles employment cases at our law firm. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the implications that can arise when the holidays roll around.
Okay.
And people work obviously hand in hand all year round. But just because you work together, you may not have the same religious beliefs. And so as we enter the holiday season, Matt, I want to hand it over to you and let you talk a little bit about maybe a 30,000-foot view of what an employer should expect and what an employee should expect.
Okay, yeah, definitely. As Rob said, during the holiday season, there's a lot of, reasons to be taken off work, whether it's going on vacation, whether it's, religious practices or events that you have to go to, and employers should be very aware when an employee requests off their time. Under state and federal law, if an employee, if there's a sincere religious belief that they hold as part of their religion, if they have to take time off for work for that, whatever it may be, employers need to be responsive to that. Certainly an employee just can't take off the whole month of December, but if an employee is requesting reasonable time off for a sincerely held religious belief, that's the term used under the law, then an employer needs to be accommodating to that to the fullest extent that they can. Certainly there are going to be situations where maybe an employer, given the unique structure of it or the type of industry they're in, maybe they can't perfectly accommodate it, so that happens sometimes. But all in all, most often an employer is required to make an accommodation so an individual can engage in their religious practices, those kinds of ceremonies or events, whatever it may be during the holiday season.
So it sounds a lot like what you talked about before, with making reasonable accommodations.
Right, it's a little bit different, used in this context, but
Right.
certainly the courts look at it in a similar way of, they just don't want to have a blanket, yes, you have to do it all the time. So they'll look into, what the practical ways a company can make that happen. The companies need to make an effort to make it happen. So that principle is the same when we talk about reasonable accommodation under the ADA or in this situation. It's an employer needs to make a reasonable effort. They can't just have a carte blanche policy of, no, this isn't going to happen under our watch, because if there's a religious aspect to it, or in the ADA sense, a disability aspect to it, then they need to do an individual case-by-case basis to make those determinations.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, what about you mentioned, we talked a little bit about religious accommodations and things like that. What about just vacation time? Are there any rules legally speaking? Is an employer required to give a certain amount of time off during the year?
So an employer in Florida, we're an at-will employment state, which means they can hire, fire you, make those kind of business decisions for any reason. They just can't be for discriminatory reasons. So in that same sense, an employer, there's no mandatory, offering vacation time, giving a certain amount of days off. They're required to pay you when you're working. They're not necessarily required to give you vacation time and having that option. Now, plenty of employers offer vacation time as part of while you're working there. Certainly, an employee has their right to use that vacation time. Now, an employer doesn't have to always let you use it, but if they're not letting you use it, but they're letting other employees use it, and he feels because of your gender, or if you're pregnant, or because of a disability, or you think there's some individualized reason they're not letting you use your vacation time, but they're letting other people use it, then therein lies a problem. That's an issue for the employer that can be seen as an adverse action they're taking against you, not giving you the same benefits they're giving other employees. And similarly, just if you're going to go there, when you leave an employer and you have that accrued vacation time, it's kind of the same thing. Nothing in Florida law requires them to pay you out for your vacation time. But if it's company policy to pay out the employees for their vacation time, and they're paying out other employees when they leave, but not paying you out if you leave, if there's some discriminatory reason behind them treating you differently, then certainly that's actionable. But certainly a company's under no obligation to pay you out.
Yeah, we live in Tallahassee. We have a lot of local government, state government, and you hear a lot about employees when they leave state government, for example, they get paid out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that translates to the private sector.
Correct. And at the state level, certainly they're a little bit more uniform about it. But because there's no requirement in the law, you can kind of find yourself in a sticky situation when an employer offers it, but they're not required to give it. They're not required to pay you out, even though they might say they will pay you out, when you're being hired.
Okay. I guess another hypothetical, going back a little bit to tolerating, religious requests. I get requests for time off for religious reasons. Take, for example, what if an employee is asked or wants to work like on Christmas Eve, for example, the office is closed, but they say, I want to come in and get some work done. Is an employer required to offer like overtime wages or anything like that?
No, the law doesn't put that requirement on an employer, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about discrimination, it's them taking some adverse action against you. Essentially, they're treating you differently than they're treating other people. So in that situation, you'd be almost asking for special treatment, not necessarily equal treatment.
All right, well, there's some hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your expertise with us. Megan, any questions?
No questions. You have a lot of people watching. You want to address if anybody has any concerns? How do they get in touch with you?
If anybody has any questions, like I said, it's not a very clear, bright line rule for all these issues that we talk about a lot of the time. So feel free to give us a call, and we're more than happy to go over everything with you, even have you come by, sit down, and go over all those issues with you, because it is a very fact-sensitive process. So always feel free to give us a call. Our number is 850-222-7777. It's a fairly easy phone number to remember. So yeah, we'll always have to talk about those issues.
Yeah, call Matt.
Yeah. Give me a call. I'm here.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. And if you see this later in the day or in the next couple weeks, like us. We like doing these videos for y'all. Like we've been doing, we're trying to come to you with things that are happening right now that could affect your life, your daily life. And certainly today, Matt, we appreciate the advice.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll see everybody next week.